I think we're just going all over the map because now everything is like so immediate online. Anybody can
Mm,
go get out up there and say anything they want. So I'm kind of grateful I work for AP where we're fact-based and we're straight down the middle and we stay away from all those things. Because even if you report the facts only, you'll be surprised if you tell the same story to 10 people, they're all going to be going off on their own deep ends with whatever interpretation they want and saying all kinds of like even horrible things or racist things when your story didn't even have anything about that because they're going to interpret it their own way.
Welcome to the FocusCore podcast, where we dive deep into leadership, talent, and the evolving world of business in Japan to help you focus in on your core business. My name is David Sweet, founder and CEO of FocusCore. Today, I'm pleased to welcome the incredibly talented Yuri Kageyama, who is a reporter with the Associated Press. She grew up in the U.S. and in Japan and is a graduate of Cornell University. And she holds an MA in interdisciplinary field of sociology, anthropology, and social psychology from the University of California, Berkeley. She is also an outstanding polymath as a celebrated poet, fiction writer, essayist, journalist, filmmaker, and songwriter. So very excited to have you here, Yuri. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start off for people who don't know you. Maybe just a quick tell us how you got to be a reporter with AP Press and your wonderful movements from the U.S. to Japan.
Yeah, I always grew up on both sides of the Pacific because my father was, he's Japanese,
Hmm.
but he loved the United States. I mean, he worked in engineering. So he was part of the, Defense Alliance the whole time. And he studied at Princeton and the University of Maryland because the University of Maryland is right near Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
And he also worked for NASA. So we lived in Alabama. So, but then when I was living in Japan, because he also worked for IHI,
Hmm.
um, he thought that, his English was actually pretty good for his generation, but he wanted me to be fluent in English. So he sent me to international school while we were in Japan. And then when we were in Alabama, I went to Huntsville High with everybody else, kids whose parents also work for NASA. So then, so that's how I became bilingual. And
Hmm.
when I went look for a job, this is when, well, I worked in the United States too as a teaching assistant and so on. And I waitressed at Japanese restaurants and, all the stuff that we do growing up. And then I was going to get a real job. Then I thought, well, maybe speaking English in Japan would get me a better job than the other way around at that time.
Yeah.
So then at that time, we still had lots of newspapers. I know I'm dating myself. And so the Monday edition of the Japan Times,
Hmm.
which is still, the Japan Times still exists, and it's still the biggest, I think, English language daily. The Monday classified ads had the best collection of bilingual jobs. So I wasn't going to be a journalist, even though I had done some freelance reporting when I was still a student in the Bay Area. I wrote for Hokubei Mainichi, which
Hmm.
is a Asian American paper. My first editor was Howard Imazeki, a Nisei man, who was really supportive of my work. He even gave me a column in the Hokubei Mainichi. So anyway, so I go there, but I wasn't really, it's not really a sustainable career. I didn't see it that way, at that time. I just wanted the classified ads. And then the managing news editor came down the stairs and hired me right there while I was buying the newspaper. So
Wow.
that means that the woman who was selling the newspaper, the who was with the archives or something, must have called him because that's the only way I could have gotten a job. So then that's how I got the job at the Japan Times. So that's we still had like the printing presses in the building. It's just still paper, ink, and all that. And then we do layout. So I learned all of the processes of a newspaper there. And then I got to go to the Environment Agency. I got to go to all the Keisha clubs. Those are the press clubs that we have, because they're part of the Keisha Club, the Japan Times. We're not the SAP. We're not part of the Keisha Club, but they are. So I got to go do all the things that the Japanese reporters get to do, and also do layout and see the smell of ink and everything, and that thing coming down, and just like in the movies. But then, they wanted me to be an editor, and I still wanted to be a reporter. I didn't want to sit there and correct people's writing. So then I decided to just quit and get another job. And I was offered a job at the Washington Post and Asahi Shimbun and the Associated Press. And then the guy who was the correspondent at the Washington Post said, hey, you should go with the AP because you're just going to be an assistant at the Washington Post. And you're going to be doing a lot of translating and assistantships to the real Japanese reporters at the Asahi Shimbun. Whereas if you go to the AP, you're going to get to do your own stories. You're going to be a real reporter there. So I don't know why. Maybe he didn't like me because he was going to be hiring me for the Washington Post. And I think that would have been a pretty good job too, because there are people who got hired assistants who went on to, become, get transferred somewhere else, right? So anyway, so I got a job at the AP, and somebody at that time, the bureau chief there decided, she needs to get experience in the United States with us. So that was really cool. And he was from the Detroit bureau. So he sent me to Detroit. Yeah, that was when that was when Japan bashing was at its height.
Oh, geez.
And that's another reason I think they wanted me to see what the auto industry was like if I was going to continue covering Japan. So that was like quite interesting because at that time they were really afraid of what Toyota and other Japanese automakers would do. And it was true. Detroit was in shambles. It was like a ghost town. There's empty buildings, huge, colossal, gorgeous buildings with nobody inside. And, blocks upon blocks of like abandoned neighborhoods because of the white flight, when the industry started going down. But actually, I never felt really that afraid in Detroit because there's nobody there to attack you. You're just there by yourself. And also, it's like really a beautiful city. All the darkness and another thing that I learned was when I covered the auto workers, they would look at me and they'll say, the J word, the J word people are taking away our jobs. And then I couldn't say, hello, I'm that J word, because they're just talking to an AP reporter.
Yeah.
They don't know, they don't know, they don't care. They're talking to everybody else who's going to be reading your story, and they want to tell you what their plight is. And, if you're losing your job, that's a horrible thing. Yeah. But it also taught me that it doesn't matter if I'm Japanese or pink or purple or whatever. I'm there to tell their story, and they're gonna tell me if I look in there, look at him, and ask the right questions. The AP is such a powerful brand. They're not going to doubt you. They know you're the AP reporter, and that they want your story out. Also, I got to cover a lot of crime there, because I thought, well, this is it was called the murder capital of America at that time. So, and also there was a lot of police brutality, and the police were trying to correct themselves. So they were very open to having me accompany them on their patrols. I got to interview the chief, the police chief, the deputy chief. So that's like a really unique experience, to be able to just do a day in the life of a Detroit cop, because they make movies about these people. Yeah. So I got to ride around with them, Um, then when I came back to Japan, I decided I'll do the counterpart and spend a night with the Japanese police. And actually, they were very cooperative, and they let me spend a whole night with the Shibuya police. This was with the Japan Times when I was still with the Japan Times. I don't think it was with the AP, but nothing happened, and so that was kind of interesting. They would talk to like drunk people who are like sleeping on the streets, and they're all nice people. You gotta like the people that you're writing about. You know, even if they're horrible people, you got to try to like them or find something you find interesting or you like, something about them. Because otherwise, nobody's going to read your story. I mean, you're the first reader of this story. So it's actually, amazing how it is easy to like a lot of people once you get to know them, because even though they might be the auto workers who are using the J word, right into your face, they're not really mean people, or they just have a very logical and if you were in their place, you would not be happy or losing your job either, because they devoted their lives to being an auto worker.
Sounds like reminds me of George Orwell, out and down and out in London, and being with the homeless, and then writing about that as a journalist. It's getting to know the subject matter and where that's at, right? So after Detroit, where did you go from there?
So then there was an opening in Tokyo with the AP. So they said, wow, you just got here, you're going to go back. But I was really paranoid that there would not be that many job openings. So I just came back to Tokyo, and I thought that I was going to get sent to other places, but it's not that easy, I mean, because already the industry was starting to shrink,
Okay.
so the job openings aren't as great. And I know that I'm really good at covering Japan, that the skills that I have are hard to beat. I'm pretty confident about that. But if I want to cover Brazil or something, that's going to be a challenge. So I'm not going to be, I didn't see that many job openings that I felt like I would be able to beat the other candidates, given that there's more candidates than there are slots these days anyway. And I mean, I was really lucky that I got sent to Detroit because, Japan was very much, relevant to what was going on. And I learned so much about the auto industry, which has helped me in covering Japan. And the contrast of the how it was a city already in decline when Tokyo was, might be being headed there as we speak. And the crime that was there was interesting. So yes, I also try to visit prisons, which is very hard to do in Japan unless you know the family of the person in prison. But you can do that as a reporter. Yeah.
So I mean, going to school and growing up in the U.S. and then being, ethnically Japanese, living in Japan, where do you find yourself more intellectually at home?
I think because I was educated in the English language, I only know how to read Japanese because I was a really young reader. I was not very social. I like to stay indoors. So I was already reading when I was like 3. And so I know how to read. So that was good because otherwise, you just not be able to handle the Japanese language at all, which is a very complicated language, as you know, compared to English. But I think I would not feel that comfortable like writing an article in Japanese. I mean, I do have to write letters, asking for interviews or email. I feel comfortable doing that, but I do feel like as a writer, I'm functioning within the English language because that's the language that I was educated in. That's the language that I think in, rather than just feeling or, just talking to people. So, yeah, but I mean, I do have to write Japanese all the time just to get get interviews or yeah, but I don't really write. I don't think I've ever written an article in Japanese or a story in Japanese. Maybe I've written
Interesting.
haiku or something. Or but that would even be mostly like I would translate my ideas that I had in English into Japanese. I think I am thinking in English. And sometimes like Japanese is very difficult, like to be polite in Japanese or the respectful language is really difficult, because there's so many different nuances. And it's become better now. Like, you can use Tamaguchi with anybody now, in Japan, even if you see them for the first time. Even old people, they don't get mad. But originally, there were people who'd suddenly start, getting angry, you know, misinterpreting what I was saying as rude because you're still asking questions, right?
Yeah.
So it's already a kind of a threatening situation for some people. And then on top of that, like it's a very delicate language that probably the Japanese, the real good Japanese speakers do it better. But I find it that difficult, and I don't think it's really even a language problem as much as a cultural problem. It's just a different kind of culture. They're not used to having straight talking women asking them questions. Maybe they would have gotten mad at anybody.
That's a fair point, and I think it's good for listeners overseas to realize that just how direct English is. I know, like for my life and marriage, if we have difficult discussions, it's always in English, just because Japanese is very roundabout and very contextual and can be difficult to say, things or ask things. And then culturally, I know when I go and interview with my consultants to clients and would go out with a Japanese woman, we have a whole bunch of different levels because you'd have vendor relationships. So there's the superiority and then the humbleness of the vendor, as well as male, female, age, if it's an older male CEO and we're in. And so I would always go with the female consultant, and we would speak English first and foremost. And from there, I could ask about personal things. I could ask family. I could ask what they did on the weekend. And those are all things that you can't really ask in Japanese in those relationships in a first meeting. But then after the second meeting, things would switch to Japanese, and all those boundaries would have been broken, and it was much easier. So it's always interesting to have that, as you have your foot in both worlds, which I think is interesting to be able to read that and understand that. One of the things as a journalist, you need to decide what's truth and what to report and how much to report. And you're also doing that culturally from, some things you might be reporting about are U.S. based, some might be Japanese based. You're writing in English, so majority English readership. What do you feel that level of truth and how much you can put in there in your journalism?
When I write for AP, there are very strict standards about what can be in there or not. Like about the violence or offensive things or so it would if there's a reason something has to be in there, it would have to clear all those there's more ERAI people who make those decisions.
Okay.
So yeah, because it's being edited but most stories that we do are fact-based. So fact is not the truth, right? It's just part of the truth. And also, we only report about newsworthy facts. So it kind of takes care of itself. And of course, like, once in a while we have these big dilemmas, do we say this or do we not say this? Or the source, agreed, but now they don't want it anymore, or, all kinds of stuff like that. But it usually is not that hard to sort out if you are if you follow the AP standards about what is news and what is fact, don't you think? Or what kind of examples are you thinking of?
Yes, I'm always wondering whether you think journalism's too cautious today or not cautious enough. Is there certain things that are just, it seems to me like in the US it's quite easy to see certain journalism is geared one way versus another. Same in Japan. I mean, you watch NHK, you're going to get a very
Right.
NHK version, which, okay, that's your choice, or you can watch TBS, and it's a different viewpoint, and you know where that's coming from. But I wonder, on the whole, historically speaking, are we more cautious and conservative, or less so in the world of journalism, do you think?
I think we're just going all over the map because now, everything is like so immediate online. Anybody can go get out up there and say anything they want. So I'm kind of grateful I work for AP, where we're fact-based and we're straight down the middle and we stay away from all those things because even if you report the facts only, you'll be surprised. Like if you tell the same story to 10 people, they're all going to be going off on their own deep ends with whatever interpretation they want and saying all kinds of like even horrible things or racist things, when your story didn't even have anything about that, because they're going to interpret it their own way. So I just think that you can't worry about that, because I've already seen even early on when I was in Detroit that I would do a very fact-based story and then the reader would be saying all kinds of weird things. You can see that, if you talk to your readers. And so, it's just now, like with the interest fading in Japan, actually. So you have to explain a lot, even though before people were interested in Japan, maybe for the wrong reasons, because they're afraid of Japan or they think the J word is going to come over and take over, which is ridiculous, ridiculous fear, right? And now I don't know what our readers are thinking, because you see such a range of people, and you're also talking to a global audience. Like there's people in India or Vietnam, who might be reading your story. I mean, I'm sure they existed before, but now we're more aware of them. And the world is much more immediate and more global. And they're going to be interested in, you got to be aware of that. So the interest is going to shift. Like BTS or whatever is equivalent. I mean, BTS is already old, right? And they're but whatever's the new thing that people are into, or whatever AI is going to do with with defense or with elections or with your friendships, I don't know. And then how is that Japan going to fit into all that? It's a pretty tight news area that you're trying to go for, when like Trump dominates our coverage. I mean, he is so big, and even if he may not like the news, or he may not like the Associated Press that much. I mean, he's been very critical about that, openly critical, so I think I can say that. But he is really good for business. Come on. Like, I mean, let's face it. And every successful politician is going to be thinking about that, and they don't need us, because they got other ways to get to the people. Like we saw that with the latest election. Yeah, she was really clever in how she used online, even things that she wasn't even directly involved with, like the one that she was like on a motorcycle, or computer graphics, and so like like how are we gonna compete against that? I mean, we're not. So yeah, so I don't think we got to worry too much. We got to worry more about how we're going to get our little toe in that space, and people, and you can't worry about how people are going to react that much. Just stick with your intentions and your standards, and do the best you can, because you cannot follow the story down the line and try to figure out how each person's going to react. And that was always the same. Even when we had the newspaper, we didn't know, what Mr. and Mrs. Smith were thinking when they turned to page 3, but we just know that now. But we can't let that sway us too much. I think we got to stick with our storytelling.
That's great. Yeah, it's always good to have kind of a North Star to be able to follow, at least to know where to go. And that in itself that integrity becomes its own social spot where people gravitate towards that, right? Which is great. Let's move a little bit. You wrote a wonderful movie, News from Fukushima, Meditations on an Underreported Catastrophe by a Poet, which is wonderful. It's a multimedia wonder of poetry and music and video performance. It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about what you were trying to do with that, around what Fukushima taught you, and that people often miss that's there in that piece.
So that was like the one big news that happened in Japan. That was really, really major news. And I was sent to the Tokyo Electric Power Company, and all the reporters were there, and we were there like all day and all night, and trying to cover what was happening as it unfolded, the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And it was a tsunami and the quake. And I mean, we were there the whole time, and then we saw like minute by minute or blow by blow how this utility, these are people who came and read your meters and sent you monthly bills and made sure that your electricity was happening. And now they're dealing with a catastrophe, right? So, I mean, these are all good guys, who just Salariman, who was in charge of electricity, and now they're trying to deal with a catastrophe. So you could just imagine how well-intentioned, but hopeless and, catastrophic that whole situation was. And then they would come in and tell us, they're trying to put the water in there and try to stabilize the situation. And good luck, it's not going to be that easy. And they're facing the ocean. That's what was different from what happened with Chernobyl. And so, and then they're telling us what's going on. And then they said, "Oh man, it's starting to the fission, or fusion or whatever, is starting again." And then we have to, file alerts and everything. And then I don't know how these would happen periodically. And then the man would rush in and said, "Oh, we were able to stop it," by whatever they were doing, like, throwing the robots in there or the water. And then we cheered.
Wow.
The reporters, because it was just that bad. So after going through that, I started writing about it as in my poetry, and and in a play. I juxtaposed that with the friendship between these two female characters. One was younger and one was older, and it ends with the younger character having an abortion. And I didn't take sides on the abortion, you know. I mean, these characters do not talk about, you know, a pro-life or anything like that. I mean, this is something that happened, and they just have to, it's the older woman accompanies the younger woman to get an abortion. They just, you know, think they have to do it. So that's what I felt like Fukushima was like, you know. There was there's no space for having an opinion or anything. You're just kind of trying to deal with the what's happened. And it was so when people, you know, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not supposed to have an opinion because I'm AP, but and also I've talked to a lot of scientists, and so I know a lot about nuclear energy, and I understand that it could be safe, but you know, people make mistakes, you know, like you might get that person that you really love, but you're not ready for marriage, pregnant, you know? I mean, it happens. And it's not because, you know, you were evil or the man was evil or, you know, the stars were on the wrong side or whatever. It's sometimes these things happen because we're human and we make mistakes and we were not prepared for that tsunami, you know, that was coming. And so we had backup generators in the basement. So it was all wet, so the backup generators didn't work. And so you're going to have to bring in, you know, electricity from somewhere else to keep that thing, you know, from exploding. And so when you see that, you know, I mean, that's what that play is about, you know. And I think that's where my creative writing and my journalism, you know, finally came to some kind of reconciliation. So I'm very happy about that. And I also went to film school very late in my life because I thought that I was supposed to do video for AP. So I spent my summer in New York, you know, learning filmmaking. And then I found out that all the skills I learned to do film had nothing to do with journalism, because journalism, you can't cut or anything. You just have to have the camera there and show that you did nothing to make this beautiful. Whereas like filmmaking is just the opposite. You learn everything you can to, you know, make a murder that's not happening look like a murder, or, you know, it's just all about being fake. So yeah, so that was really interesting. But you know, so I worked with some filmmakers to document that the performance, to make it a film. We did the performance twice, you know, one in New York and one in San Francisco, and we documented both as film. But the film that I sent to film festivals is the one that we did in San Francisco. So yeah, that's what it is. Oh, then I did have to get my get AP approval for that piece. So somebody had to go over the script to make sure that it there was nothing in there that made us like that made the AP look bad. And actually I was very fortunate because the person who looked is at that time, he's a very talented writer who does a lot of creative writing outside the AP as well. So you know, I was lucky that colleague was the one that looked at it, not some not somebody who didn't do those things. So he did ask that one line be changed. Actually, there was one line in there that I said, "There's no accountability." He said, "Just take that out," and that because it's too much. And yeah, and I don't know why he said I didn't ask, because I thought, yeah, there's no accountability. We don't need that. You know, it's the story speaks for itself. That's too much. So I don't know if he said that for editorial reasons or for
might be just an editorial one. Do you have would you be open to reading some poetry for us this morning?
Sure. Which one would you like?
Pick one. You've sent me many, and I love them. For our listeners, please go on her
Well,
website and read
yeah,
her
I like
poetry.
to read the Fukushima one.
Great.
Yeah, this is sort
This
of
is this
like,
the one you set to music as well with the.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. I love the band behind it too. It's a very cool piece.
Thank you. So do you want to play for it with
Nah,
it?
let's read. Let's hear. I'd love to hear you read live.
Okay. So this is sort of written like pretty much like a rhythm, where most of my poems are free verse, but this one I wrote like it could be recited. So y'all, it's a meltdown nation since 3/11, covered in the fear of unseen radiation. But don't you expect any revolution. All you will find is fear and contamination. Here in Fukushima, it rhymes with Hiroshima. Instead of a holler, here just a whimper. They say it is safe. The kids like Chernobyl are coming down sick with thyroid cancer. Fukushima, Fukushima, Fukushima. It's no hallucination, the refugees' life, no compensation, no resolution, just nuclear explosions. Get your dosimeter, sees him in the water, lost imagination. Here in Fukushima, it rhymes with Hiroshima. The radiated brothers' faces are hidden, goggles and masks like an astronaut, from head to toe, the invisible workers. Fukushima, Fukushima, Fukushima. Premature aging, nerve cells dying, sterility, deformity, unborn baby, blood count dissipation, leukemia debilitation, DNA radiation, Godzilla's affliction. Tsunami demolition, God's decreation, genetic devastation, our next generation. Here in Fukushima, it rhymes with Hiroshima. No-go zones forever. The world must remember. Fukushima, Fukushima, Fukushima.
Wow. Thank you. We're coming up on to 15 years of since Fukushima on 3/11. So, how does that resonate with you now, 15 years later?
Well, I don't think it's resolved. There's still no-go zones, and I think it's Japan's still having a very difficult time, like restarting these plants, and a lot of these plants are old, very old, and because they haven't built like that many you know new facilities, just because. But I think it's still an ongoing issue. I think we haven't resolved it, or and then people are still say that even those that have relocated to other places in Japan, they say that they have mental and physical problems, and some might be related to radiation that they're exposed to. They're trying to still, there's lawsuits still going on, and so yeah, it's something that is, I don't think it's like news, everyday news anymore, but it's
No.
very, very everyday for the people. Yeah.
It's
And
interesting.
what we're going to do with the nuclear plants and all that.
Yeah, since they're starting to switch them back on. It's interesting. I
Yeah.
had one of my guests just released this month, Paul Beatty, he does a lot of work in this area, and just he mentioned we in Japan had such a wonderful opportunity post 3/11 to really take the lead globally with alternative energy and really lead the way, and somehow we just missed the boat on that, which I always find unfortunate. I think there's so much opportunity for us in Japan to lead the world, and I hope that we can learn from that. For you, writing news from Fukushima, what did that unlock for you creatively?
I mean, like I said, I always separated the journalism from my poetry, and I had poetry published before I became a journalist. I was writing poetry since I was a child. I didn't know that some people don't write poetry. It was just something I did all the time. And when I was at UC Berkeley, um, that's when I met Ishmael Reed. He's my mentor, and he's a brilliant poet, playwright too. And then actually his wife, Carla, directed News from
Hmm.
Fukushima. And he was the one that published my first poem in his publication. I just went to his class and gave him a poem.
That's right.
And the first published poem was called "The Big White Bitch." That was my first published poem, and it's about big white ladies. That I. It's really like politically incorrect, but it was kind of like like my kindergarten teacher was this big white woman, or that it was just a kind of an observation, poem, I guess. And but he's always been very supportive, and he published my book too, collection. Um, and he still writes to me, and so that's the thing that
Hmm.
everything came together, and I want to do another one and get Carla to direct it, similar, but have more male characters instead
Hmm.
of female characters, um, about death. I'm thinking a lot about death. So I think death is really interesting. It's kind of universal. I don't know what Ishmael will say, because Ishmael said, I used to write about sex and love a lot, and, about like how I felt about big white women or whatever.
Hmm.
And he told me that when I wrote about Fukushima, that was when I really became a more of a complete writer. I wasn't just writing about my personal peeves, or um, how I liked this food, or this person or whatever,
Hmm.
and that I was making something that was more meaningful, or commentary, or trying to make sense of something that was just bigger than just me and myself. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Because I was trying to deal with human folly, or mankind, humankind folly, how we deal with energy, how we deal with mistakes, that kind of thing. And but I don't know what the next thing will be. I mean,
I'm excited to find out.
I am working on different segments, but I don't know what he'll say. He hasn't seen it yet, so he
But
might have an idea.
how do you find, because a lot of times being a journalist, you're writing for, you have a very distinct audience. If you're doing poetry, there's an audience, and even you've done filmmaking as well. But now you're putting all that together, and you're collaborating with other artists, and some of that is watching how, I mean, you have people that are reciting your words, and I know for your film you had people filming as well, and you have a director, and then trying to bring all that vision together, um, and fill it with a potential. That collaboration, how has that changed your thinking about art and how you present?
With music always, and I like if you're gonna have a book published, you got to have like a cover and all that. So you got to work with visual artists. And when I was in the United States, in San Francisco, there was a lot of um, community friendships and collaborative. We used to have workshops all the time with people and other. It's just that kind of environment. I don't know if you've lived in those communities. Yeah, yeah. San Francisco is very much like that. And they're actually, the artists are quite good, too. And so I started working with visual artists and musicians then. And then when I came to Japan, there's a lot of my son went to Berklee School of Music in Boston. So there's a lot of Berklee people in Japan. Like I would say like a huge amount of students in Berklee are Japanese.
Mm.
And because the Japanese have a tremendous respect for jazz and um, American pop. And so I usually find my son's friends to collaborate with. And they're very nice kids, that's good. I don't think I think Japan's young generation, they're headed in the right direction. They're very open, they're not mean-spirited, very creative, talented, versatile in all kinds of international modes of expression. And so I work with them. And for the actual performance that Carla directed, she did the auditions. She found the actresses. She knew what she wanted. And that's another thing, is that once you start working with a film director or theater director, it's best to let them you're just a writer. But I had some say because I'm the producer, meaning I'm putting out the money and trying to coordinate everything. So I had more say than the run-of-the-mill script writer. But you usually don't have any say. The director and the producer takes, and it's better because if you start if different people start saying anything, that too many directors, it's never going to go anywhere. Yeah.
It's always important to have that vision that.
Yeah, you got to believe in that. You put down the words and you put down the basic idea. So no matter who becomes the director or it's still going to be there. You got to believe that. It's like a child. It's already left your house, and you can only watch and cross our fingers.
That's what art is about, is developing that potential within the words or the video or whatever medium they're working. There's a wonderful anecdote with T.S. Eliot. He was giving a reading, I think, of The Wasteland. And one of people came up to him afterwards and said, "Oh, Mr. Eliot, I finally figured it out, and here's what I saw in your poetry, and here's what it's all about." And T.S. Eliot was very good. He's like, "That's good too," and just walked off. And just always remember that's a good way to leave your art and just let it out there. Let's talk a little bit before we leave about the future of storytelling and stories of Japan. And it's such a wonderfully rich country and rich in history. What do you think story-wise is still waiting to be told properly for Japan?
Stories that were told in the past by Akira Kurosawa or even like Lady Murasaki, or people who weren't really trying to write for a global audience per se. They're just being themselves and telling a story. And a lot of the like the stuff that Murasaki wrote about is pretty universal, right? About how something in nature is beautiful, how she, thinks some guy's good looking. I mean, these are pretty universal sentiments that somebody has, and being aware of death. She was very aware of death and transience of life. So, and then we're finding new writers from all kinds of sectors, because it's the publisher or the marketer or whoever's finding these people, right? I mean, it's just these spotlights are going, and life is just kind of going on overall, and it's like where the spotlights are.
Mm.
So I don't think that from on the ground anything has really changed that much, even from probably countries that we haven't even thought about. Um, we're always gonna love the baby that is born, or the baby that's not loved, or those kind of issues. Um, we're going to deal with sickness. We're going to meet, part, and then there's still war going on. All these, people are hungry. We need food. We might have a cute dog that needs food. I don't know. All these things, and what do we find beautiful, or what sounds good, and all this is actually, very diverse, but actually, if anything, it's all coming because of globalization. There's more commonalities, you know what I mean? Like what the kid in New Delhi is listening to or Saigon, or that might have been very different in the past, is actually a lot closer. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because maybe we're kind of missing out on some good stuff that could have happened if they were not so globalized. But so you can't really worry about it, what needs to be told, especially if you're the creator. I mean, if you are gonna try to find out, what's going to be the next blockbuster film or something, or who's the singer you're going to put your money on, then you got to have that figured out. But if you're the creator, you can't worry about that. And there are great writers whose writing was never discovered until they were dead, right? We know that. And then some writers were a lot more fortunate and, had, million sellers. Like Van Gogh never sold a painting, right? Or maybe he sold one, I don't know. But I mean, the Van Gogh exhibits that we have now, still, I mean, because Japanese like Van Gogh a lot,
Love it.
yeah. And he is good. He is good, and he had a special. Certainly, he had his own style. But then when you think about it, like if he didn't have that brother who believed in him, we would never even be seeing his work. So it is like luck or chance, so you can't worry about it. If we're dead, you're not going to have any control over anything. I think, you and I are probably among the more fortunate because we have gotten, our persona or whatever it is out there more than usual, but we're not like, who's that? Is it Big Bunny? Is that the guy that won all the Grammys? I mean, we're not Bad Bunny. Is that his
Bad
name?
Bunny? They did
Yeah.
the Super Bowl?
Yes. Yeah,
Is
Super
that
Bowl. Yeah.
right?
So like, compared to that, we're still like kind of like, probably gonna be forgotten. Maybe not you, but me, certainly. So yeah, you can't worry about that. And we don't lie awake at night worrying about that, do we? Like we just want to do the next thing, the next fun thing.
Mm.
And when you start writing, it does come, doesn't it? Like, the sky kind of opens up and it comes. And it was not the one that you were thinking was going to come. It's something else. And that feels really good, right? When hey, man, what happened? Is this me, really? Oh, did I write that? That kind of thing. And then if you're a writer, you would know that. And that's what keeps you going. And hopefully, if we are covering a nuclear disaster, not that I'm waiting for another one to happen, then you might be, that thing that comes down might have some real significance on a bigger level, like Ishmael says. But it's not because I planned it that way. You can't, it's like falling in love, or having to get that abortion that when you didn't plan it that way. I mean, that's maybe that's not a good example, but and we're only here for a limited time. It's actually quite long when you think about it. When you think when you were 3 years old, that was a long time ago, and all the things that you did when you were 3 years old. But in another way, it is very short. even unless you believe in reincarnation, like my Indian friends. So you got to make the best of it, and then we do waste a lot of time, and we have to work or make a living, or, you have to talk to your partner about something, who's going to get the milk tonight or whatever. I mean, life goes on, but I think it is actually pretty nice. I think life is nice, and there are a lot of wonderful things about life. Not to get teary-eyed or anything or sappy about it, but I think there's a lot of good things, and I think most music or literature that people like is because they identify with it and think, yeah, that's the way I felt, or yeah, you have a nice way of writing about love, or
Yeah.
about having a kid, or yeah.
But I underline what you're saying is also having the courage, and I would hope our listeners take everything that you say and then have the courage to put it out there, and because life is short, and at the end of the day, usually no one looks at a lot of the creativity anyway, so you might as well have the courage to put it out there in the world, because if you do reach 1 or 2 or 10 or 100,000 people, it's wonderful. You were talking about beauty in life, and one of the things that drew me to wanting to have you on the podcast is your social media posts that you kind of do every day. Reporter at work, or a room with a view, or pictures you just do every day. You have kind of a simple flowers or a beautiful thing in the world, and you put that on different social media, and that just makes a small statement, along with everything else that you're putting out with your news and people that you're interviewing, and all the incredible work you're doing. But I think that little tiny statement every day that speaks to me, and that probably speaks to a lot of people. So thank you for that.
Well, the reason I started doing social media is because it's for AP, because you have to find people real fast to talk to, so you can go and find the somebody in that place. You need that man on the street or woman on the street, so it's useful. And people think that wow, she just wants attention. There's some negative people who make fun of my tweets. You're really positive. I really appreciate that. So because I might as well get something out of it if I got to be on that in that space as a reporter.
Yeah.
And you can only be honest, and you cannot, be opinionated, say, I hate, XXX, or so, there's, food is safe, flowers are safe, room with a view is safe, usually, I mean, unless somebody says, some bad thing about the view or where you live or whatever. So yeah, but I mean, it's really helped me find people.
That's great.
When I need to find real quickly. And it's what's good is that, you know the location of that person too, roughly. So you can hone in and, ask 20 people, you just tweeted about this. Are you there? Do you want to talk to the AP? And if you have no tweets at all or no threads at all, and you suddenly reach out to somebody, they're not going to talk to you, okay? I mean, just they're not going to trust you. But I already have a presence there, that I am a real AP reporter who's never, done anything horrible except eat pasta and do flower arrangement. So then they're going to talk to you. I mean, it works out both ways, and you got to invest some work into this to build your presence there. Otherwise, people aren't going to trust you. Or why should they? But you'll be surprised, if they're in a very, like a tie-hand situation. Sometimes they do want to talk to you, and sometimes they it helps them to talk to a reporter. I mean, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there are repercussions that we're not responsible for. Because there's so many evil people out there, who might start attacking you online or whatever. But I mean, I think we still need to be out there. That's the price we have to pay. I mean, we are public figures. We're not Donald Trump, but we are to an extent public figures. So I would just want to say that when I was working in Detroit, and we still we used to have our headquarters in the Rockefeller Center, so we were like big time, and then I would call somebody who was living in that place where there was some news happening, like a disaster or whatever, crime, and then the little kid, he's probably like 6 or 7 years old, would say like, "Hello, I'm Yuri Kageyama, reporter with the Associated Press. May I speak with your mother?" or something. And then the kid would say, Mommy, there's a reporter with the Associated Press on the phone. Like she was so happy, And yeah, those were the days, I must say, but I
That's
still
great.
remember that because, that little kid, is probably, an adult now, and I don't know how she feels about the Associated Press, but that trust and excitement that she expressed, is something we have to live up to.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, I want to end with quick fire questions. No
Mhm.
thinking, just quick answers. You ready?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Journalism or poetry?
Journalism or poetry? Both, I guess. Both. Because, I would not be able to feed myself without the other.
We want AP to let you keep doing it. So
Yeah. I do need the paycheck.
pen, keyboard, or camera?
Both, all of it. You need
Yeah.
all that. Yeah, the power of the pen is very, very important.
Do you,
That's an idea.
this wasn't one of my planned quick fire questions, but
Yeah.
pen or pencil?
Oh, I use both.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pencil when I need to erase, like, if you're gonna, you're gonna have to erase some of these things, like your plans or the words. But I write a lot on the keyboard too.
Do you write poetry on the keyboard?
Yeah, I write poetry on the keyboard too.
I always write poetry with pen.
Yeah, a
Prose
lot of people say
prose with
that.
keyboard.
A lot of people say that, but because I've just been on the keyboard for so long as a reporter, and you got to,
Yeah.
think so fast.
Favorite flower?
Favorite flower? Oh, I because I do ikebana now.
Uh,
The teacher teaches us you got to do the seasonal flower. So whatever is the inspirational flower that speaks to the season coming, that should be your favorite flower.
nice. So now is with Tsubaki or
No,
Ume?
that's old. Tsubaki is already old because that's winter. So
Okay.
we already did like early cherry blossom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Okay.
now we're going to be doing
That's very early. Okay.
lilac or magnolia or whatever those
Yeah.
things that look like pussy willows that come out. Yeah.
I love, yeah. Favorite lunch?
Favorite lunch? Ramen kana.
Don't know ramen. What kind of ramen?
There's so many different ramen. Yeah, you could
Uh,
go crazy eating
I,
ramen.
I think with
Or the pastrami sandwich, because it's impossible to find here in Japan. Have you found a good one?
yeah.
So then I think that if you're in America, you want the perfect ramen, because it's so plentiful here. And then when you're in Japan, then you want like the perfect bagel or whatever that doesn't
With
exist
pastrami.
here. Yeah.
I keep on saying when I die and go to heaven, I get tom tom in every meal of the day. Uh, best place in Tokyo to think.
Probably your own room, I think.
Nice. A writer everyone should reread.
The writer everyone should reread. I don't know. Shakespeare, I guess.
There you go. You were talking about Van Gogh going. I was thinking Shakespeare. We had Shakespeare was some points very popular, some points not popular at all. So you die, you lose control of your creativity. Shakespeare wasn't always popular, right? What still scares you in a good way?
Getting beaten. I don't like that. Is that a good way?
I don't think so. Getting beaten.
Huh?
Hopefully not like beat up, but
No, I mean getting beaten on a story or
it's very competitive.
yeah, I don't like to get beaten.
Nice.
Or getting forgotten or
Hmm.
well no, that's okay. Getting forgotten is okay. I don't know. Going hungry would not be fun. Oh, but it has to be a good way, right?
Yeah.
It has to be a good way. Yeah, so I don't like to get beaten. That's good. You know,
I
you
like
always
that.
want to, yeah.
It's one of my favorite quotes. As a marathon runner, there's a quote that says, "Someday you will go out and meet a runner who's practiced more than you have, and when you race him, he will beat you." It's like
Yeah,
that still scares me a
that
little bit
makes
more.
sense. That
Yeah.
that makes sense. So
So
then you have to keep practicing.
I
Yeah,
do.
well, one good thing about the AP is that we have this really good sports writing. So you can always find an athlete that is of global interest wherever you are, right? So uh, like in Japan right now, there's boxers,
Hmm.
lighter weight boxers. They're pound for pound in the top rankings. So I enjoy talking to them. And what's great about a lot of times you talk to Japanese men and you're a woman and you're kind of not a Joshiana kind
Hmm.
of reporter. You're kind of like old and a woman. Then they don't really know how to treat you, because they're
Hmm.
not used to they're only used to having ojisan reporters. But the athletes, the world class athletes like Naoya Inoue or Junto Nakatani, those are the top rank lighter weight. They just look you right in the eye and they don't they're just like that guy the girl that said mommy mommy an AP reporter, the worker who said the J word to me.
Oh, yeah.
They're so into their sport and at the top of their careers that they're just talking to the AP and they have respect for AP. It doesn't matter. I don't look like a boxer or Joshiana or anything. I like that. I like that about our business.
That's
Is
brilliant.
that we do represent our readers, and if that source gets it, you can really get the story. You rise beyond the limitations that trap us, with our poetry. If their poetry or we can only be who we are, we could not, I mean, of course we can use their imagination to be a black male or whatever, but no, I mean, think it's best if you write about things
Hmm.
that are deepest to yourself, and whereas like, journalism is about something else, it's telling their story and getting that feeling that, hey, this guy's talking to, all that we stand for, that's a sense of justice
Hmm.
or legacy or legitimacy or something, that we're there for, that's a really good feeling. And you don't get depressed over that, whereas like sometimes you write poetry or fiction and you're going over that,
Hmm.
it's actually reliving that horrible experience again, it's not uplifting. There's nothing uplifting about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
insight. Well, thank you so much, Yuri, for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. I've loved hearing your anecdotes and all that you've done, and keep writing and
Thank
giving your
you. Yeah.
truth. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm doing the uptown low down, yeah.